Hello, and welcome back to today's American Flyer Trains, where we continue with the rebuild of 336, the 484 Northern from A.C. Gilbert's American Flyer Collection, 1953 to 1957. Most of the components only needed washing and a thorough cleaning, and that included, but might not be limited to, the main boiler unit, the boiler front, the steam chest, the pilot truck, the pilot, the screws that hold the brush bracket assembly as well as the field to the train, the trailing truck, and none of these components have been lubricated, but the pilot truck and the trailing truck will be. The oil pan, the piston, the smoke unit piston, as well as the smoke unit pin that holds the piston in place, and the smoke unit filler tube. This one is red plastic. The tender and the reverse unit are complete. The only thing lacking on the tender is the placement of the Union Pacific large block lettering road name, which will go right here, and I'll do that with dry rubs, which I've already received from Portline Hobbies, and I'll do a short video on what has worked for me in their application. So continuing with the importance of the current flow, as you know, railhead to pickup wheels to contact springs, on into the reverse unit, on out the wiring harness, onto the pins, and then to the jack panel. That brings us to the next key element in the circuit, and that is the brush bracket assembly. I thoroughly wash, clean, and polish these with alcohol and components, things like pipe cleaners and other components that I can get down in the inside, because usually I find these on just about every train I've ever built for owners as well as my own. They are incredibly greasy, maybe even oily, and thoroughly coated in brush carbon, and that needs to be removed. Following that, I'm going to replace the existing brushes, one of which is right here, and you can see how short it is, with new brushes from Portline Hobbies. The springs were in good enough condition to be repurposed. They, however, were thoroughly cleaned first. The next key component in the current, of course, is the armature. This one has been cleaned and polished and is ready for service. Now, when I clean and polish these, I will usually do an alcohol wipe down with kind of a coarse paper towel on the commutator, as well as the worm gear, as well as the exterior of the plates. There's no reason for those to be carbon or oil or grease coated. And of course, it includes a thorough cleaning of the slots between each one of the bars, and I usually do that with an alcohol soaked toothpick. If necessary, I'll maybe even get an X-Acto knife, but you can see they're even shining, but they can be the root cause of some problems. Now, I also touch the commutator very lightly with the kind of medium steel spring rotary tool brush to loosen further carbon buildup, which sometimes is going to be very, very stubborn to remove. Now, there's one other element or process, and that is the grinding of the commutator. Now, I may have stated earlier that I'm not in favor of grinding where it isn't necessary, and I'm not in favor of grinding being done by the non-professional. The professional is going to have the ability to attach this to a drill press, and they're going to have a jig on the platform of the drill press capable of holding material such as a very, very fine grain, extra fine grain sandpaper or something similar, to ensure that the two are meeting each other in the same plane. Now, Hannon's book in 2001 thoroughly explains for these commutators, especially the disc type, which you see here, that it is very important to maintain what he calls the planar relationship between these bars. Planar means that each of these bars, this one, and of course this one, are in the same flat plane. Get these out of a planar relationship by having ground them at an angle is not going to lead to a successful long-term life for your train, I don't believe. There's also the danger of removing the poles or grinding the poles down if they're done at an angle. Let the professionals do that. If you don't have the equipment, get somebody to do it that has that equipment. Now, what I have done to demonstrate it can be done, quote, at home, is I mounted this one, as I have others, into a simple variable speed drill. Then I take an extra fine sanding sponge, and it's you might say a pretty firm sponge, but nonetheless it's a sponge, which means it's going to give. I punch a hole in the side, and then I'm just going to mount this loosely, not at the proper angle, and you'll hear me turning the drill just a little bit so I can hold it. I will then insert the end of the armature into the hole that I just punched, and then insert it in, and then very, very gently grind on the commutator. Now, what I like about the sponge is that even if you hold it at an angle, because of its sponge nature, you're going to have, I think, a very good chance of maintaining more of a planar relationship, and you're going to be able to control the pressure and feel it with your hand. Plus, using a variable speed drill, you can turn the armature at a very slow but effective pace, keeping aside or probably minimizing the damage that you could do to change the planar relationship of these three bars, or even coming close to the poles, such as that one right there. And you can see that it took a little bit off of mine. But I found that that is enough to do grinding on these.